Your voice, your voice, your voice with the NRP. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the NRP candidates as they amplify your voice.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Semanas, your host of Your Voice with the NRP, and we're here as we are every Monday to discuss issues impacting our island and our nation. Of course, we have just come out of federal elections, and as the NRP always says, elections have consequences. And so this has been a consequential election. Today on St. Kitts, Labour, who emerged as winners, went around the island motorcading. We had similar events here on Nevis yesterday. We'll talk about the election, the process. We'll talk about the way forward when we analyze the result that we got on polling day, Friday, August 5th. We'll take another break and then we'll be back. Our guest this evening is Dr. Patricia Bartlett, who contested Electoral District 9 on behalf of the Nevis Reformation Party. She was a first-timer. We'll take a break, then we'll be right back.
Your voice, your voice, your voice with the NRP. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the NRP candidates as they amplify your voice.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Patricia Bartlett, we know that most people would be home resting, reminiscing, and trying to get some of that strength and vigor back after a couple of weeks of intense campaigning. But you have decided to come out tonight to work. How are you feeling? How are you doing?
Good night, Steve. Good night to the listening audience and the viewing audience, of course. I'm doing well. I've held up. The age it really was not an issue. Some people want to make it a factor, but obviously I'm here and I don't know what condition the others are in, but I'm in good condition, not only emotionally but physically. So I'm here tonight just to engage with the general public for a little while, the time that is allotted to us, and I'm hoping that it would be an engaging conversation and it would not just be confined between the two of us or restricted to just two of us, but I'm hoping that the callers would call in and be a part of the program tonight. I'm encouraging them to do so.
Well, of course, people have got a lot on their minds. We've heard a lot said. There haven't been too many talk shows since the election, but people meet you one-on-one or in groups and they're having their say. I think it is in order for us to give congratulations to the fourth Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Terence Dew.
Yes, I would like to join with everyone else in St. Kitts and Nevis as we extend congratulatory messages or send them to him. I'm sure he's going to receive them in good grace. It was, I think, a good win for the St. Kitts Labour Party. They worked hard, and I think they have been rewarded with all of what had happened on the other side. I thought that they probably could have done even better, because these guys on the other side just self-destruct. But we would have talked about that before, and we don't really want to get into their politics. But I congratulate the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, and I'm hoping that we can all work together, because even NRP, even though we didn't win a seat, we still need a seat at the table because we represent a significant portion of the electorate. And I'm hoping that he would be gracious enough to invite us to have a seat.
Yeah, well, you said it was a good win. I think it was an amazing win. And I'll tell you why I say that. 7 years ago, 3 separate parties, different parties, came together to unseat the previous Labour administration. And what we were hearing is that Timothy Harris would have 2 terms, then Sean Richards would get 2 terms, And then Mark Brantley would get 2 terms for a total of 30 years. And the Labour Party would be banished to the political wilderness.
Right.
To have made a pivot in 7 years is an amazing thing. They ran an amazing campaign. Well, Peter Wickham, a noted pollster, said on election night that really Team Unity self-destruct and all that Labour had to do to fill the breach. I think they did a little bit more than that. They ran an amazing campaign. I followed all the parties and they ran an amazing campaign. And I want to congratulate 2 friends in St. Kitts, Dr. Joel Clark of St. Paul's, an heir apparent, I think, for the seat in St. Paul's. She was the campaign manager for the Labour Party. And, of course, the campaign manager for the present Prime Minister, a very good friend of mine's, Shez Doe Tyson. She said it was very tiring work, but those ladies went to work and they have delivered on behalf of their 90-year-old party. Now, you contested for the first time. You were one of 7 women who, self-styled by the female minister in the Nevis Island administration, the Honorable Hazel Brandy Williams, said you guys were running in heels. Only one of the 7 women emerged as winner in their constituency, Marsha Henderson, who of course her father is Deacon Orwell Jeffers of Fountain Village. What would you think about the state of where women are in politics? One of 7. Are you breaking the glass ceiling, or is it taking a lot of doing to set aside some of these men in the political arena?
Interesting that you should ask the question, Steve, because a while ago when you were sending praise, high praise to the women who were the campaign managers, I was like, why couldn't the person who was running step aside after so many years of service and give the same capable woman who you made mention of an opportunity to run in a relatively safe seat? Well, not even relatively, a safe seat.
Well,
an obviously safe seat, right?
The Prime Minister won, was it 89 or 93% of the vote? The safest seat in the Federation, I would say.
Well, so, you know, that it was a golden opportunity to give a woman the opportunity to run, you know, and give her an opportunity to serve. Because the way it panned out, if you look at the results, I mean, it was a blowout for most of those seats, you know, and they knew the seats that were vulnerable. They knew the seats that probably they would not have gotten. And so I think that it could have been, they could have been a little more generous, to put it mildly, because women are so involved in these campaigns. All of the campaigns, women are involved in, you know, in a big way. And so I don't understand why is it men still have this resistance. And all these parties are aware of what the threshold should be. It should be 50-50, and they are well aware of it. Why is it they're not making an effort to make sure that women are involved? I mean, it still baffles me. And what baffles me even more is that women are continuing to support them. Now, if you continue to lend them that level of support, they would never make way for you. And that is just my, you know, my position. And I think it's about time that women took their rightful places and step up to the plate, you know, challenge these men, you know, and even challenge at party level. Because if women were to withdraw their support, I don't know where most of these parties would be anyway. So I'm totally disappointed, to be quite honest with you. Not necessarily in the results of those women who didn't run, because obviously they were placed in circumstances where it was difficult this time around to win. But so be it, because Labour Party in itself, which was the dominant party this time around, only fielded one woman. You know, and that's not good enough. I don't think women should continue to accept this. I'm pretty pleased with this stance that the NRP has taken, and we got the opportunity to run. I can't say tomorrow morning, or right as I sit here, I can't say that I never got the opportunity to run. I got the opportunity. Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, she got the opportunity as well, to the extent that, you know, she almost won. You know, she was almost there. Except, of course, we know these things, the vagaries associated with these these polling issues, or these the political process, as we like to call it, as if it wasn't compromised enough, and there are a lot of things that we can speak about as it relates to that.
Well, we will.
But she had a good shot at it.
Yeah, well, I think in the last election, Jeffers won that seat by over 300. This time it is 59. And I've heard of many scenarios which could have erased that 59. But we will talk about those things. But you mentioned the importance of women. And we had a good example in 2015, the women in white. So it was Dr. Thelma Philip Brown who they led the prayer warriors. They were the ones doing the breakfast. They were the ones in the organization. And I know, as I said, Minister Brandy and yourself and Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge have been trying hard as the leaders in this particular area to make that breakthrough. On the ground, did you witness any resistance to the fact that you're a woman, a female candidate?
No, initially when we first came out, I could hear the rumblings and the grumblings, like people not going to accept women and stuff like that. But after we hit the campaign trail and people recognized that we were substance, we were not just style, and we were not just making noise. It was substance that we were dealing with, the issues we were dealing with, the issues, the day-to-day issues that the Visions are facing. And I think we gained a lot of respect for the approach that we took in not getting involved in the tumbleweeds. We just played it straight and we stuck to the issues. And I think that we really, at the end of it, I wasn't recognizing that sex was an issue at all. People would have overcome that. And I'm hoping that going forward, it would be even less of an issue, less of a talking point. I mean, people don't spend so much time, counting how many women we have on our parties. I hardly hear that as an issue nowadays.
And that is despite the disparaging comments which came from people like the Premier, who spoke about mascara and women in skirt, and the Honorable Alexis Jeffers referring to the party leader as a nobody, and yet you didn't find that sort of resistance on the ground.
I didn't find it on the ground, not at all. But coming from them, I was so disappointed in that kind of behavior, and maybe that is why they were punished the way they were. Had it not been for the illegal interventions, they would have employed, they would have not been in office tonight. No, not them, because they were well challenged. On the ground, people who live here sent a message, and I know that they got the message. Had it not been for what they would have done, things would have been different.
Despite all the hanky-panky and the millions they had to spend, there was a swing in all the constituencies of about 6 to 7%. That is meaningful. It's significant.
Yes. So when the pollster would have made his prediction, it was based on people who were on the ground at the time. It did not figure in that you will have all this interference, because that is what I call it now. It is interference. I mean, it is getting to the point that the Visions themselves, they do not want to participate in their own process. It's almost as if we're in colonial days where somebody from outside is going to decide who is going to be governing the territory, And it is sad that we have gotten to this place, and who have brought us here? The very politicians who carry the honorable, and you're supposed to be respectful and call these people honorable. And it's hard, it's difficult, because they're compromising the offices. They're compromising the integrity of the offices that we used to hold as respectable positions. And it is sad. And I don't know for how much longer the Visions are going to tolerate this, but at some point we're going to have to decide, we're going to have to make the pivot. Are we going to go down this road and let these people continue to do these things that are illegal in most instances? And they're not really a true reflection of what a democracy should be. At some point I was like, it seems as if one of these days we might get to the point, if we don't check it now, that we get to a point where in the public square you're going to have people auctioning the position of government. People are going to be able to go in the square and you bid, because that's where he's going. People are buying. And when you hear stories from the ordinary guys on the street talking about these people who are in leadership position, and what they're willing to do to compromise just to get in power, because that's what they're doing. They're buying power off of the street. Now, that is not what I think our forefathers contemplated. We had a rough time in getting the right to vote, and now people in Nevis, who live in Nevis, don't even want to vote. because they don't want to be associated with it, just because of what has been brought to it, the stain that has been put on it. And it's about time that we recognize who the culprits are and remove them, because they're not adding anything. They're not adding anything significant or anything positive to our lives, on our livelihood on this in this country, particularly in Nevis. I don't know what goes on in St. Kitts. I can't speak for what is going on in St. Kitts, but we have a set of people here who are willing to do anything for power, and the power purchase agreement that they're making on the street during election time is appalling, and it ought not to continue. We should not let this thing get too deep-seated. It is bad. It is bad.
Well, we had the classic case during the campaign of the representative for Gingerland, not only at the local level but the federal level. A man who has had charge of youth groups in Hanley's Road, trying to keep young men on the straight and narrow. The man who's president of the Empire Sports Club for Life, which teaches sportsmanship. Going to Rollins, where the man who went ahead of him, the late Van Samry, got a lot of his support, most of his support. And he went to Rollins to tell people, stay home. Stay home. I mean, to me, it was shocking. This evening around 7 o'clock, I was driving past the Gingerland police station and I heard a megaphone, a loudspeaker. And when I looked, the vehicle was going up Rollins Road, up Hard Times Road. So I said, let me follow it. I wasn't sure what they were publicizing. And then I found that it was Rowan Isles going to the constituency to thank people for voting for him. There were a group of young men, obviously coming from the basketball court. Some were on bicycles, some were on foot. They had basketballs and so on. And when Errol thanked them going past the hideaway, when Rohan thanked them going past the Hideaway Disco, the former Hideaway Disco, I heard one guy, I reckon he can't be more than 14, who said, it's money we want. I was shocked. I had to call a teacher, and I said to that teacher, don't you teach civics in school anymore? You know, do you remember the civics book of good citizens, active citizens, passive citizens, and they're pulling this thing uphill, and then the whole project failed and everybody went down into a precipice. We have young people on the island, 12, 13, who are not even of voting age, saying it's money they want. How did we get here?
Good question, Steve. Our so-called leaders have corrupted the system to the extent that we don't even recognize it anymore, as if it's a reflection of our own people. You know, I don't know where it started. I've heard stories as to how it started, but for me, it's not necessarily about how it started. It's about what are we going to do about it so it does not get perpetuated. We shouldn't be going from cycle to cycle getting worse. We should be a progressive nation. And when we have these kind of bad elements in government, we ought to be able to recognize that as a people of 98% literacy, we ought to be able to recognize this thing for what it is and the danger that it poses to our democracy. And we ought to be able to do something about it. And when you hear the expressions on the road from guys, I mean, that is not, he's not in isolation. I've heard so many, I got so many of those calls on polling day, and I was almost overwhelmed with these calls, because people kept calling and their thing was, oh well, I'm not going to vote. Well, some of the women would, and a couple of women would have called on behalf of a group of guys. It's always on behalf of a group of guys. Well, I have 5 guys here, or I have 15 guys here, I have 10 guys here, and these calls came in regularly throughout the day. And the thing is, the cry is, they want to vote, but they're not going to vote unless they get paid. And my response each time was I didn't waver any time whatsoever. Because for me, it is wrong, it is bribery, it goes against the rules, it is illegal. So I was very consistent. Every time I got a call, I would say to the person, try and get them to go to vote without the money. because they ain't gonna get it from me. I don't believe in it, and if they don't want to go to vote, I'm not going to tell anybody don't go vote. But if it depends on me paying them, they're not going to vote.
Yeah.
I don't understand why our politicians stoop to that level in the first instance. You got an opportunity to serve for 15 years, and if you couldn't make an impression on the people who you're serving, that you are indeed qualified to operate on their behalf or to represent them, and you have to stoop to that level of paying them to vote for you, it means that you would have failed. You would have failed, and you need to check yourself. It's time for you to do a self-assessment. It means that you have not delivered on behalf of the people. And if you have a conscience, you would step aside. You would step aside in the best interest of Nevis. And it's about time, and I'm appealing to those politicians who cannot, on their own record, go to the people, present their record, and win an election. I'm appealing to them, please, on behalf of Nevis, just step aside, get out of it. You've had enough, you've extracted enough for yourself. Nevis is not in a good place. We could have been, and we should have been, in a better place. It cannot always be self-interest. And I feel it for a lot of these boys on the side of the road, because job opportunities have not been created for them. So when they tell you that they want money, everybody wants money to survive. Some of us are more comfortable than some, but we have to recognize that there's a need in the society. We need to be able to provide decent jobs to these boys, or else we're going to get to a point where we have just lawlessness on the street. Because here it is, our highest officials are indulging in lawless behavior, because bribery, that's just what it is. How can they have respect for you? So I'm appealing to those politicians who have bought their power this time around, notwithstanding they can't do much with it now, because there is even weaker state. Because right now they have zero power as it relates to the federal, involvement. I mean, they can go to parliament and talk, but they don't. Who are they going to have with them? Because even on the opposition benches, they don't have any support. Who trusts them on the opposition benches? So the three of them can effect change on their own. They must be able to collaborate and work with other people. And so right now, they're not even in a good place. They had whatever, I can't say that was a celebration, but obviously, as fake as everything else that they're associating themselves with in these days, that's what it was, a charade. This parade really was a charade, because they just drove around, no enthusiasm whatsoever, because really, when you have to look at it critically, what did they have to celebrate? Having stolen, well, let me not use the word stolen, but having manipulated the system to get the result that you want, you got it. At all of expense, what can you now do with it? Because they would have, and the NRP has been vindicated, because they were going around, oh, we're not, who you all forming alliance with? As if that was supposed to be a big issue. But I just don't find that they have too much critical thinking on that side. How could you engage in what you would have engaged in and think that that would be down to the benefit of Nevis people? Forming a pre-election alliance with PAM restricted them. So now
they've been restricted since 2015. The Premier has boasted over these 7 years that he wasn't going to do like previous administrations and wait until the dead of night for people to come over to sing kits. He made a joke of former Prime Minister Denzel Douglas, said he almost drowned. He said they were doing everything in the sunlight. Red Cross building, marching through town, on the courthouse step. Obviously, he doesn't understand the key thing in negotiation. You don't put all your cards on the table. So he did it in 2015. Well, he will say that Van Sammy did it in 2015, but we know who was the driving force. And then he came again in 2022 and did the same thing again. I'm not trying to discredit the leader of PAM, but as tonight, he is history. His resignation will come or he will be removed. He has taken the party from 4 seats to 1. How could any rational thinking person make a declaration that you are giving your support to the Honorable Sean Richards, who you said in 2020 went to Government House against your wishes because you wanted to remove Timothy Harris. And that you were at the time, it is alleged, over in Half Moon Bay, trying to insert Lindsey Grant. Both of them have lost their seats. Grant had won all 10 boxes in 2020. Now he lost all 10 to a newcomer. And it shows you how far they have fallen. And we know why. They have been disgraced in several respects. They're facing the court. They have been involved in ratting up the police, at least one of them. And you bet on that horse? We can't be serious. We can't be serious. So I do agree with you that something is wrong with the rational thinking. But then again, they say that he's a strong man and he makes all the decisions. And then he told the other two what they're going to do. We're going to mash it up. And they have spent the campaign regretting that this is where they've reached. Nobody seemed to have even discussed the letter written by Eugene Hamilton, which said there are consequences. It's not just about you, but the people who depend on you, the people who support you. I am struggling to understand if these guys even think rationally. And you know what strikes me again? We've said here many times from these microphones, we've used proverbs that a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. We've used riddles that Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall and he had a great fall and all the king horses and all the king men would try to put Humpty Dumpty again. And these guys were using the argument that you just extract Timothy Harris and that you have Pam and CCM, and that's the real unity. That level of political thinking baffles me. I could have said it here. They'd never ever be able to put that again. And the election results have proven me right.
Yeah. Well, Eugene Hamilton is a wise guy. He has been engaging in critical thinking. And so it may baffle you, but it didn't really baffle me. Because the thing is, the trend has been that I don't think that we have enough people collectively making the decisions. And so if the person at the top errs and those at the bottom, you know, he errs and everybody else just accepts that he's the king. But they've been making bad decisions ever since as it relates to our involvement at the federal level. First it was, and they must have by now, should have thought that they should have articulated a clear position as to how is it we'll participate at the federal level, knowing full well that on your own, even if you got 3 seats, you cannot form a government on your own. You have to be invited to a table of people who need you. And so you must plan, you must have a contingency plan. And so that is what I think is critically missing from the dynamics on that side. We had the position at one time that we're not going to align, so we're neutral. Then we had another position where we were 2 out of 3. We were in a strong position, but we decided, okay, let somebody else go forward.
The kingmaker theory.
Right, and then at that point in time, we had the balance of power. Then we decided we're going to go all out, we want all 3. We got all 3 to strengthen the hands. And you got all 3, but you were weaker. And now, you got all 3 again. And last time you were just weaker. So it seems like each consecutive time, they've becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. Why are we reposing our trust in these 3 guys? It doesn't make any sense for us as divisions, because now we're at a point where they have 0 power. You have 3 seats but 0 power. That's essentially where we are tonight. And I don't see it getting any better. Because having declared that they are part of PAM, mind you, it's St. Kitts the manifesto, Nevis CCM.
They're the joint manifesto.
Was launched in St. Kitts. So it seems that they would have, like everything else, closed down shop in Nevis and just moved to St. Kitts, just to piggyback on everything, the gains and whatever is there to be had. And so I don't understand the mentality or the game plan of that party, and I'm not going to even try to say it's not going to baffle me. I'm just going to leave it where it is and just appeal to the people of Nevis to seek a better choice. We understand what happened this time around, Because on the ground, the people of Nevis went out, maybe not in overwhelming numbers, because traditionally it seems as if our voter turnout for the federal election has always been marginal. Nothing to write home about, because people have less interest because they don't see the direct benefits to Nevis. And maybe that is something else that we need to engage people on and educate them as to why it is important to have a seat at the table. Because when you hear these guys step away and talk about fair share, you're not getting fair share. You have to be able to negotiate. But in any event, we can't just remove ourselves from the process. And so maybe we have a little more work to do in convincing our people that they ought to vote, ought to get involved for federal elections. But having said that, though, these guys have had the opportunity to serve, and they have not brought home the bacon. And so I'm saying it's time for us to move away from that. Nevisians tried. I think that we tried, even though it was not a lot of us that turned out. I think that the message that the Nevisians who live here wanted to communicate is that we need different and better representation. And these three guys were not necessarily the three guys we wanted. Maybe in St. George's I would give you that. But if you look at the returns, it cried out for change, even though it's in a small, small way. Had it not been for the people who were brought in and swamped the people on the ground, we would have a different result. Nevisians would have gotten the change that they wanted. There are a lot of Nevisians, mind you, who wanted change but didn't go to the polls. They got upset. You talk to them, they're not going upset because a lot of them would have voted for the CCM the last time around, from what I've gleaned from the conversations I've had. So they're disappointed. They're still holding on to gripe from
and personalities and
right, those kind of things that Sim Daniel has been dead and gone for so long, and people would still tell you stories about something that they thought that he might have done that they didn't agree with. And so the party now has to own that, or they want us to own that. We're trying to suggest, no, we not that you're divorcing yourself from NRP and its principles, but as it relates to the personalities and what they would have done, they ought to have been, well, they would have been removed for the same reasons. You already punished them. Why you don't want to come and punish me? All I want to do is serve you. Why should I be carrying the burden of something that Sim Daniel, who would have been dead and buried long time ago, he already carried it, he already paid his price. Why is it you want to do it? But the thing is, what people need to understand, you're not doing it to Sim Daniel, you're not doing it to me, you're doing it to yourself. Because to deny yourself the opportunity to get a better representative than the one you have, you're self-destructing too. If you deny yourself, you can't just stay home and want change. And a lot of people stayed home, but they want change. That's not how you get it. And I want to appeal to my people. You must play a part in the whole process. There's a part to play. Everybody has a part to play. So it is not fair that you stay home and expect that I would make all the sacrifices. Because by myself, I only have one vote. After all is said and done, I only have one vote. And people have to understand that collectively we can get the change that we want. But you can't stay away from the polls and get it. And so I just want to appeal to our people. We have another election coming up. Take the opportunity to do your part, because we have seen what has happened. When I heard people saying there were estimates of about 1,000 people being brought in from CCM, and then you see the turnout, and then you see the results. Obviously, had those 1,000 people not hit the ground here, you would have an NRP contingent going to St. Kitts to represent the interests and genuinely representing the interests of the people of Nevis. Not the same three people in blue suits going down who have, it seems, up to this day, have not impressed me. I don't know if maybe they have impressed you or anybody else.
I'm hard to
But from what I'm hearing in Nevis, divisions on the ground are not impressed. And we are thinking about Ireland. And what I heard coming from the people who were brought in, they are still into the mode of party. Because they don't live here, so they don't understand
the dynamics
and the hardships that we are going through. They left and they associated themselves with a party. They're a little removed from what the situation really is and the hardships that we are facing here. And I don't think when they come back they come back to an atmosphere of wine and dine.
Oh yeah, Caribbean Cove and food and barbecue and music.
Right, and there's no time for serious dialogue. no time to engage the individuals who are on the ground, even though, and some people don't even have families left here. So there's no interest really. And so they come home, they wine and dine, have rentals, have party with their friends, and at the end of the day, they leave and Nevis is worse off. And I'm just trying, and that is an issue for us. We need to be able to fix that. We need to be able to get into the psyche of the people who are in the diaspora. They ought to be able to understand what our situation is here. And I'm not denying anybody their right to vote, but it is not fair.
Politics is about being engaged.
What is happening is not fair to the people in Nevis who have to live here. So when the boy on the street say he wants some money, he genuinely wants some money. He genuinely wants some money. But the question is, how long is that money going to last you when you sell your power to these people who have no interest in making sure that your situation is different tomorrow than it was last week? Because they get the money this week, and next week they're going to still be in the same position, in that they still can't afford the basics to live. One young man said to me, we need money, and I'm trying to appeal to him, don't look at the short term. Give us an opportunity to get into power so that we can create jobs, so that you can have long-term, a sustainable future, not just for now. But then he looks at me and he says, but when the children want food, which is a realistic way of approaching it, but still, at the end of the day, I still want to appeal to people. I'm not telling people to take money, but if you were to take it, still do the right thing. Do the right thing. I would never advocate that you should get involved in that, because bribery, you never know if somebody is going to set you up. And that again, I don't understand how the Electoral Commission, these people who live here, are well aware that bribery is going on. Why is it they could not investigate up to this point? And people should be held accountable. People should be going to courthouse to answer to that charge, because it is widespread. You must be able to catch somebody. You must be able to, if you're really of a mind to get it done. I can't tell them how to do their jobs, but I think that we're going to have to find a way to put a stop to bribery in this country.
Ironically, our country's motto, established in 1983, is still country above self. It seems as if that is dead and buried. It's 8 minutes past 9, and we're having a very engaging discussion with Dr. Patricia Bartlett. But of course, what is this program without you? It's called Your Voice with the NRP. Our numbers are 469-1616 and 469-170. Whether you're on this side of the Narrows or over in St. Kitts, after a very exciting motorcade island-wide in St. Kitts, very scenic views over there, looked at today. Dr. Bartlett, we're going to take a break in a bit, but let me tell you, when I got up this morning, my phone was blowing up, and lots of messages, all coming from St. Kitts. They said our premier is on bended knee, asking to be made part of the federal government. They have now come with the argument that Labour won in St. Kitts and CCM won in Nevis, so that should be the federal government. It's as if we don't have a constitution by which we are guided. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll look at how things unfolded on election day, the process.
Your voice, your voice, your voice with the NRP. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stevenson Manners and the NRP candidates as they amplify your voice.
And we're back with Your Voice with the NRP, the first since the federal elections of Friday, August 5th. Dr. Bartlett, you faced the electorate for the first time. You looked at the electoral process. I know you called in on Thursday morning, I think it was, on the morning edition of Tell Me, to voice some concerns you had. Share those, and then tell us how things unfolded on election day, and some of the hanky-panky which you said you saw, or witnessed, or heard about.
Well, yeah. Well, But early in the morning, I started off by getting a call because everything, all of the documentation that we should have gotten access to would have been late in coming. Everything was given to you late. So when I realized that there was a lady in Brown Hill who was a rabid supporter of the Premier, he can't do no wrong for her, and she was being made a poll clerk. Now, how could you put someone in charge of the process who has a vested interest, you know, who is a big party member and, you know, supporter of the Premier? And so I would have appealed. We sent a letter the day before to the supervisor of election, you know, making sure that we document it to let him know that we are aware and we are not pleased with it, because it is really suggesting that the system could be easily compromised in his favor. And so by the time I got there the next morning, she was not a poll clerk.
So she was removed?
She was removed.
Okay.
I didn't know if maybe the communication came back late. I still have not seen any communication, any letter in response to what I would have written to the supervisor of election. But notwithstanding, when I got there to observe what was going on at the poll, she was now an agent of
from poll clerk to
agent, but she was inside, you know. And that again, I don't like the idea. I went into a polling station and there was a presiding officer who was, I think, because I don't know who people are, I would have heard that she's a CCM supporter, and then her daughter was also in the same room, you know, as a polling agent for the CCM. There's, you know, these things make you uncomfortable. These things shouldn't happen. I personally, I don't think these things should happen. But you know, this is 2022. I don't think we should go into a next election cycle and give allowances for the local election. We can continue this way. But after now, we need to get to the point that we're staying up with technology. We should be doing electronic voting up to this point. To still have all this back and forth and, you know, people who could compromise the final result. I mean, the kind of things that you hear, they're just unbelievable. I'd never been exposed to this level of corruption in my life. But the kind of stories I've been hearing and things that people would do. I mean, as we used to say a long time, the hothead, you know. And I don't think that we should continue to subject our system to that level of vulnerability, because to put all these people in here who have an interest in the outcome is not good, especially when people, you know, are compromised for various reasons. All of us are in hard, you know, most of us experiencing hard times. It's easy to bribe people. It's easy to, you know, influence them with monies, and so I'm not satisfied with the process. I tolerate it because that is what we have been, you know, we have inherited. But going forward, I think we need to be a little more progressive. In Anguilla, I understand that they have transitioned already.
Yeah, their last election was electronic.
Right. So
and the result came early, and Grenada's election with far more voters came at 9 o'clock.
So I think it's about time that we transition to electronic voting and kind of, you know, eliminate some of these inconsistencies that are going on and these discrepancies that could happen, you know, and the vulnerability that is associated with the present system that we have. It's time for us to get to that point. Because what I was seeing on election day, it is painful to watch some of the things that happened. And one of the things that was pointed out to me, which I was so disappointed in that one of our highest officials would have been in a particular area, and the people in the area were saying that he was directly involved in dishing out monies.
Directly.
That is what I was receiving. And I was so disappointed, because what I understood used to happen is that he used to have his agents go out and do the dirty work. But to hear that he had gotten to that level, I mean, I saw him in the area, but I just didn't want to believe. And it really shook me, because I know that, you know, I mean, we would have heard, you know, about things happening, but when you see people in the area, if and the opportunity, you know, I was so disappointed. I really lost faith in that individual. Not that I had much faith in them anyway, because some things that they would have done in the past, you know, but it really shook me to the core. We ought to have better morals than that, particularly in our leaders.
Mhm.
We ought to have a level of, respect for the office. And some things I just don't think that people should engage in. For my part, I would have said, and people know what my position is, win, lose or draw. I am not trying to buy power. So win, lose or draw, I would not entertain the idea of the bribery. And we keep going around that, but that is a lot. It has a lot to do sometimes with what you hear on the streets. So when the young fellas them said, now vote, unless somebody pay them if you want their vote, as if they're doing it for you. But that is how it has become so personal. And so quite a bit of that chatter was wrong from you wake up in the morning until the polls close at 6 o'clock. You're hearing that as a constant. And that is the part for me that was most disappointing about my first experience. Your first experience shouldn't be so traumatic. I anticipated some challenges, yes, and I was well geared mentally to take on a lot of the challenges. But as it relates to actually see this played out, with the monies and people waiting, close to the polls, close to the closing of the polls, I'm seeing young fellas running with their pants, pulling up their pants, running to get there because somebody just moved into the area, and then, everybody started to, to move, They didn't have any motivation before. But all of a sudden, everybody became mobile and everybody started to run to the polls just because, and also disappointed in that. And I'm hoping that we would be done away with those kind of things. I don't know if maybe we need to have more stringent measures in place as it relates to how we go about selecting our people, our representatives.
I think we've got a first caller for the evening. Good evening, caller.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
How are you doing?
Oh, we're doing well. We're just trying to do a little post-mortem of the election which has just gone. What are your thoughts?
Okay, let me tell you straight up. CCM propaganda machine has been in full swing. You got a situation where they claim the reason why our leader in St. James's did not win is because she and the representative in the local assembly is not getting on. Right? And therefore, I know for a fact that they are especially good at propagandizing their stuff. I remember the days when there's a certain guy used to take tapes and burst them in two. And when you listen to the tape, you'd feel as though that is what exactly the person said. But what they would have done is cut out portions of it. Another thing, you go into the polling station area, and you got people with closer than 100 feet to the polling station, which ought not to happen, especially when they finish voting. They ought to move away. Right? You go outside the polling station, people are on the back step, and you know what they are doing, soliciting. I hope that our new Prime Minister would hurry up look after this electoral system.
Sure.
Is that it, caller?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us. So there was some serious revelations during this election, things which are definitely unseemly. I have had some interaction. And first, let me preface that what I'm going to say now by this. One of the things I didn't see during this election is the presence of observers. It was advertised that the OAS was here, led by the venerable former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Bruce Golding, and he had an 11-person team. And then CARICOM had a 5-person team. Now my routine has been the same every election. I go to vote early, normally before 10 o'clock, and then I go around the island just to make my own observations. I cannot remember seeing any member or any person wearing a bib saying we represent the OAS, or any vehicle saying on the roof that we are members of the OAS Observer Mission. Did you see any observers on Nevis?
Well, I don't know if I might have seen them, but I didn't recognize anyone as being serving in that capacity whatsoever. I'm not saying that they were not there. Maybe it's an issue of branding. I don't know. I would want to give them the benefit of the doubt that indeed, if they're going to sign off and say we have a free and fair election, that they would have been on Nevis or would have had a presence on Nevis since we were part of the process. But I maybe they were there and I just didn't. I wasn't really lucky enough to kind of...
Well, you said luck, but they must be traversing the island's main road.
Bump into them.
You must bump into them. Nevis is 36 square miles and a 20-mile ring road. If they were here, then they were very invisible.
Well, they were not very visible to me. And like I said, I can only speak, for myself and my observations, but maybe someone out there might have interacted with them. I don't know, and I don't want to say that they were not here when they were, and then having to come back to apologize. So I'm just going to assume that they were here and I just missed them.
Yeah, well, I read the preliminary. Normally they make their comments after, and of course, one of the things was that the polling stations were not clearly marked. This is constituency St. George's, this is polling station number 1 or 1B as the case may be. And I noticed that at the place where I voted. I've interacted with several people, not in Nevis but over in St. Kitts, who interacted with the observer mission, and you can bet your bottom dollar that the point you raised about going electronic, I believe this will be the last election that we have manually, because I happen to know they're not pleased with people staying up until 9 o'clock. Here on Von Radio, I heard that people like, some people had to take us a break because to count 50,000 votes took forever. I've long given up at that. At 8:30, I was laying in bed. My radio was on. My phone was close by, so I could monitor different stations and stuff like that. But there can be absolutely no reason why 50,000 votes took us up to 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So I take my sleep, I doze off. Somebody come to tell me, boy, this person win or this person lose. Also, we've heard of late starts for the second time at the King Collins Stadium. And at the Joe Board Center somewhere in Wade's Garden, we heard that people were in the lines up until 10 o'clock the evening. How can we get this so wrong?
Well, definitely.
I think we heard, I might stand to correction, this is our 10th election since independence.
Yeah, but
and Nevis has had several more.
Right. Definitely we have to get it right. And what we're doing is, it's not logical that in a place like Grenada, they can finish by 9 o'clock, and a place like St. Kitts Nevis, and we're finishing the next morning 9 o'clock. That just doesn't even make any sense. Why is it these things are happening? And I've heard about some things that go on behind the scenes, sometimes that compromise the results. And sometimes that's why, sometimes and so we need to be done away with those kind of things. We must put a system in place that is advancing with time. You have to keep up with the times. Why are we still having counts and recounts and, we must have a limit. If you're going to recount, you can't have more than one recount in a night. I mean, I don't know that we even have 50,000 votes, because based on what we would have seen... Well,
50,000...
That's the potential... That's
registered.
Right.
But for the most part, we had less than 50% in several constituencies.
Right, and so we're not going to have 50,000 votes to count. So I don't know why we keep doing this, but it's always about what is going on behind the scenes. I'm almost confident that that's what it is. I'm not pointing any fingers on any particular person. But a lot of times I think it's not kosher. Those kind of delays, inexplicable delays sometimes, because even to pick up the boxes, if people rush to the polls at 6 o'clock, you have to let them in, and a lot of that has been happening. So it might have something to do with when people get paid to go to the polls too.
It's always a late rush. We've got another caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Yes, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
A question I want to ask. Is there a figure that a person has to lose by to trigger like a recount? Okay, like for instance, if somebody lost by 10 or 5 votes, that's very narrow. But is there a limit? Say, well, okay, if you lose by under 50 votes, you triggered for, well, okay, you must have a recount, but, and then also, like, how much recount? You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
I always wonder about it, because I can understand if somebody, lost an election by 5 votes, you're going to have, like, several recounts, but at the same time, you have to say, well, how much is allowed? You got my point?
Yeah, I personally think it's a judgment call. The person in charge makes that call. I kept hearing, there's the underground communication. I kept hearing that in Central Bastille, John L. Powell was asking for recount after recount. In my way of thinking, John L. wasn't even in the race. But you see, he had only had 21 months in office, and he was one of those trying to hold Brantley and Sean Richards back because he hadn't had enough time to demonstrate his ability. So he realized that his political career could be over in 21 months. So I heard there were calls for recount there. What do you think, Pat?
I think the recount should be limited.
That's why I say it's ridiculous.
Yeah, okay, we'll take... Yep.
I listen to the figures, right?
Uh-huh.
And Channel were getting 40-something votes in a box. 50-something votes in a box.
Uh-huh.
I mean, come on. I mean, I think there was, if I'm not mistaken, I think in one box he only had either 17 or 19. Right? And if my memory serves me correctly, I think Channel Over went over. I think he only went over the 100 mark in one single box.
But you see, when erratic leadership compromises you, and as a young politician you realize it might be over by the shouting, you're struggling for life, for political life. So you want recount after recount.
I mean, I would understand, if between the three guys and the young lady, as I said earlier, if it's like a 5, 10, 15 votes that making a difference, you would understand.
Yeah.
But I mean, somebody asking for a recount who has been getting 40 and 40 votes in a box.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I would hope the supervisor of election did a reasonable job leading up to the election in keeping the electorate abreast of what was going on. Now, I think there should be a post-mortem too. He should also come to face the media to say how things went on the day,
right? To
giving advice on how we may move forward. We know that the Observer Mission will do that, but he's the man on the job. For instance, I'll give you a good example. I'm looking at Congress Maynard outside the electoral office, and the crowds left a meeting somewhere in Central Bastille, it is, or East Bastille, to come down to the electoral office.
Right.
And we see a fire truck. And so rumors are spreading all over that there's a fire in the electoral office.
Yes, I remember.
One of the observers came out and said there's absolutely no fire.
Fire, right.
Some people say it was a decoy for Hanky Panky to go on. Now, if we're going to trust the process, the supervisor of election must come after the fact and explain these things to us, face the media, because we're trying to make the process better.
But, overall, it was very unfortunate that we had to be going back to the polls 3 years before the scheduled time.
Yeah, but in St. Kitts, 3 times before, Nevis has to go by December.
Exactly, yes, that's right.
It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and as far as, when I talk with my friends, both PAM and CCM, they did not achieve their objectives. Because, their objective was to form the next government.
Yeah.
CCM and PAM.
Greed got in the way.
you know, and it is so unfortunate. And well, the CCM they get away, but Palm pay a big price.
Huge price.
Huge price. Look at the returns. I mean, look at the figures.
No, they were slammed.
Yeah, I mean, you had PLP candidates who just was launched 2 months ago. Some of them just came into politics and was actually going neck and neck with Palm, who has been around for 57 years.
Exactly.
It is so embarrassing.
Well, they've got to pick up the pieces. Over here, we always figured that Sean Richards was being manipulated by the Premier. The Premier still has a government for the next couple of months.
Exactly.
And Sean Richards has none.
And he has retained his 3 federal states.
Yes. Well, with reduced margin.
Yes, right.
A message was sent on Nevis as well. But in St. Kitts, you guys didn't ease up. You sent a resounding message.
That's right.
You see, maybe we are too small and people are still stuck on personalities over here.
Yes, because a lot of people upset over this whole thing, you know. A lot of people upset. Well, as you know, Mr. Manis, this whole thing got started in March.
Yeah.
At the PAM convention.
Yes.
You know, and it rolls on until, you know, and, you know, as we rightly said, PAM paid a big price.
Yeah.
So, and you know, it is so embarrassing. Anyway, I will continue to listen.
Yeah, and you know that PAM convention, when the sheriff rode into town and decided he's going to be showman in chief, that was a defining moment. He should never have gone to a PAM convention to denigrate the Prime Minister, and this from a man who says that diplomacy matters.
Yeah, it was very embarrassing.
But only when he's on overseas trips. It doesn't matter at home at all. Well, thank you so much for calling.
Thank you so much, Mr. Manners.
Thank you.
And Dr. Bartlett.
Yeah.
Good night.
And Dr. Bartlett, you mentioned what I observed on Saturday morning. There was a deathly quiet in Nevis. You didn't see anybody from the CCM. You didn't see the politicians. And then they woke up and decided that, boy, we got to try and celebrate something, you know. It's a minor victory, but let's go celebrate it, and let's go down Caribbean Cove and celebrate and motorcade around the island. The net result is that the elections plummeted these guys from the seat of government to the opposition. And that's why they're pleading and begging to be part of the federal government. How has Nevis lost here?
Well, Nevis has lost out big time, because we had an opportunity to at least negotiate what Nevis could have gotten in the previous government, even though we think we had squandered that position. Prematurely we had to go back to the polls, and now we're at a disadvantage that we don't even have a seat at the table. And that is what I think infuriates me most of all. We don't even have a seat at the table. We have 3 seats given to one party. Waste of time. Waste of time. Because for them to have aligned themselves as if they were a part of PAM, why would Dr. Ju take them on at this point? You know, I mean, there's nothing for Dr. Ju to gain. I don't know that he has advanced any constitutional changes that would require, you know, the 2/3 majority that would really need them. And even
hold it there, we've got another caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Thank you. Thank you.
Caller, you're on.
Yeah, I call back to say congratulations to my comrade leader, Dr. Drew, and to my representative in constituency 4 for a job well done. The people of CCM, right? They are very disturbed and PAM, because they were hoping that we would have confusion in St. Kitts. But the Kittitians has a better understanding of what is happening. We could not have afforded another 1993 in St. Kitts Nevis. So what they have done, they have gave a strong message. Could you imagine the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party winning an election by 9,000 votes? Remember that they said that the PLP was the party to look for. And you can see they even get more votes than the People's Action Movement. Anyway, let me move on to say congratulations to Dr. Patricia Bartlett. Doc, you have done an exceptionally good job for first time coming out of this table.
Thank you.
And I want to wish you all the best going forward. And to the other members, Rohan, and to our beloved party leader, Dr. Janice Hodge, I hope that you'll continue to keep her hand on this pulse, and the people of Nevis will wake up and smell the coffee. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Good night.
You can respond, and
we
the
just
caller
like
had come in.
Yeah, we'd just like to thank the caller. We did fight hard. We did fight clean. And I think that is important. When we came away from the process, we came away with our integrity intact. At least I, for one, know that I would not have surrendered any grounds as it relates to my principles. I would not have compromised my principles, not for this. And I'm hoping that maybe the people who have been in it a long time and who have lost their way, I'm hoping that they would have learned something from the way that we would have conducted ourselves. Because even being first timers, I think that we did well, considering the challenges, that we face. And I'm hoping that our presence in this arena would at least, in some way, I don't know if osmosis could work if you're not that close. But somewhere we would like for it to permeate the atmosphere within the political sphere and be able to make a positive difference. We can do better. We are a people who we used to go Sunday school. We used to be mindful of the morals in society. We are seeing them slowly, and maybe not slowly, maybe it is too fast. The erasing of our morals, the disregard. We see it in the vulgarity in the streets,
We've got another caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Yes, Mr. Manners, I called back, I just want to echo the sentiments of the last caller. I just want to wish Dr. Bartlett all the best. And Dr. Daniels, I think you guys, did well, for a first time, because, especially, I think Dr. Daniel, I think she lost, 59 votes?
59 votes, coming from 300 plus in the last election.
Exactly, she brought Mr. Jeffers down, by a long margin. And, I just want to encourage you guys, don't give up. Let us look at Dr. Drew, our new Prime Minister, as an example. He lost twice before, and he stayed.
Stayed the course.
Right, and look, Friday he was successful.
Fourth Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis.
That's right. Some people lost twice. They would have said, I finished with this. I can't, So I just want to encourage Dr. Bartlett and Dr. Daniels, just, hang in there, and who knows.
Well, caller, thank you again. But
thank you so much.
Yeah, what I can tell you, I've sat across from the candidates for the NRP over these past couple of months, and they are dogged fighters. Right. And you've got others waiting in the wings, J.D. Keynes, Cleon Stapleton. They're gearing up for the local election, which we know will be called by December. The Premier likes the month of December. That's when he signed the Charlestown Accord. That's when we had the last local election, and the upcoming election will be in December as well.
Wait, let me ask a question, Mr. Manners. Is the CCM will be joining the Labour Party?
Well, we have heard, last night, let me back up a little bit. I didn't listen, but I heard that last night the Premier addressed his gathering at the Caribbean Cove and said that the Prime Minister, Dr. Drew, had reached out to him. I suppose he was trying to say to them that, don't worry too much. We're going to try to do something to make sure there's camaraderie. And knowing Dr. Drew, I think absolutely he has to reach out to Nevis in some shape or form.
Right.
Dr. Bartlett said that he should incorporate people into his cabinet. We'll have to wait and see. But the Labour Party cannot afford to deepen the divide across the Narrows. So he has to be reaching out to Nevis in some shape or form. And I think that's his heart. I was heartened this morning when I heard that he had extended to the Prime Minister, the outgoing Prime Minister, the courtesy of having his security officer in place and to have a government vehicle for the rest of the week We have had instances in Nevis, for instance, where somebody loses and they take it away in the dead of dawn, early morning. And we know what happened to Prime Minister Douglas. His security detail was removed.
Yeah.
And in fact, the person who drives him around, I think, has been out for several years on half pay because of something that happened at Warner Park. And I think it was an independence celebration.
Yeah,
So Dr. Joe, I think, has a good heart. His leadership is going to be tested very early. And we look
Yeah.
to see how he reaches hands across the Narrows.
Yeah, we have to stop. We have to, stop this kind of politics that we're demonstrating. You understand?
Yeah.
And election is just a contest.
It's a contest.
It's just a contest. You
Game
have to-
over, we move on in the name of nation building.
Right.
Yeah. I can tell you one thing that I expect to
Oh,
see.
sorry.
Yeah. Under Joseph Parry, for instance, he initiated joint cabinet meetings. People laughed at him and said, why are you going across the shark-infested waters?
Yeah.
These guys were in unity for 7 years.
Right.
Then came back to tell us they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know how much money was in the CBI when they had an overwhelming majority. So I think this election, which somebody like Sam Conda tells me all the time was divine intervention, will allow St. Kitts and Nevis to breathe again.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you very much for
Thank you
calling
so
in
much.
again. Dr. Bartlett, you had said that you think that people over here should be invited to join the cabinet.
Well, I said that before. I think we should be engaged in some level, or people need to be represented, not necessarily. Because the thing is, the way the structure is, it's not truly a federal structure, but we need to be engaged in some level. We really just elect people to parliament. So really, there is no right to be in cabinet. It's not a right. I think it would build goodwill if he could at least appoint a senator. Like I said, we already have 3 on CCM side. We could appoint one from NRP because NRP represent people as well.
Yes, I agree.
And so you can't send 3 guys to represent the interests of half of the population and the other half is not represented.
Hold your thought. We've got another caller. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Mr. Manners, a pleasant evening to you.
Good evening, the Mayor of Cotton Ground. How are
I
you?
just want to call in to congratulate Dr. Patricia Bartlett. Pat Bartlett, you did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Excellent. You win on the ground. You win on the ground. And I want to congratulate Dr. Janice Daniel Hard and Rohan Isles. I'm behind you all 100%. When you go down, I go down with you all. When you come up, I'm there. If you swim, you dive, I'm around. A strong supporter. That's what my mother leave in my will. Stay with NRP. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, the Mayor of Cotton Ground.
A real warrior for the NRP, huh?
He is indeed, he's one of those constant, He's always there to support you. You can't go wrong, if no one else turns up, he would be there. He's very dependable and very supportive, and I really appreciate the sentiment. I really appreciate the support, and so I just would encourage him and others, who are like-minded, to continue to support us, because it's not easy when you're in opposition. It is not easy because people are so easily victimized around here.
We've got another caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Hi, yes, good night.
Hi, good night.
I just wanted to really say congratulations to Patricia Bartlett, the NRP team. They really shook the table. Really, really shook the table. It was clear that CCM did have some concerns. So, even though it seems like a loss, you guys won, and you won greatly because you really were the people's choice. With that being said, I wanted to ask a question. I understand about the state elections. Would you guys be also vying for the state elections? Can you explain a little bit more about the state elections?
She was asking if you'd be, she said state, but I think she means local.
The local election,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
The local
Yes,
elections, I'm sorry, yes.
Yes, the local elections will be coming up soon. We have 5 candidates already who would have been launched for the local elections. So yes, we will be a part of that slate.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. So keep the momentum going. You guys got it. You were the people's choice. We know how they won. That's okay. It's water under the bridge. Now it's time to get out to the people. You guys had emotional intelligence. You were able to lay it out and engage the people. Keep it going. I see a win in the future. Be blessed and take care.
Thank you very much. Interesting that the caller used the word momentum.
Yes.
The CCM been struggling with that word and did everything to increase it, but it didn't happen.
Right.
We saw a decrease of the momentum.
Yeah.
Let me put something to you, because I was at a function last night and this question was asked. They were not clear what you meant when you said that you will not take a portfolio in Nevis if you were elected to go to St. Kitts. And they were asking me for clarification. I give you an opportunity now.
Yeah, the whole thing was distorted. They took a part of the conversation and ran with it.
Hold it. We've got another caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Hi, good evening. I just want to congratulate the NRP. You know, I think they did a really good job, and I would say keep up the good work, because I see a win in the future. They cannot win us fair and square. They got to do their dirtiness to win us.
Yeah.
But one day, we are going to win.
Change must
Very
come.
soon.
You'd better believe it. Change must come.
Change must come, and Nevis people want change. Nevis people want change, and change must come. Yes, and we need to investigate that dirty mark.
Thank you.
That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank
Good
you.
night. I'm calling from Canada.
Oh, from Canada. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for calling in. So, Pat, you
You're
were saying that your remarks were...
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the caller
Yeah,
and the previous caller, though, for the sentiment. We really appreciate, and we really appreciate the encouragement, particularly come from women, because
Yep.
people used to think that women don't support women, but they're demonstrating that women are out there supporting women, and I thank them for that. As it relates to the comment that they have been saying that I made, as if it was a comment in isolation, because what they're good at is deception, particularly the premier, and it hurts me when he tries to do that to people who are unsuspecting, because he knows that sometimes people don't listen very well, and he knows the audience that he's playing to, and it is wrong. He ought not to be doing that, because as an educated person, as a leader, he should not be deceiving the masses. Because what happened, I was sitting right here when I made the comment, and the representative on the other side was sitting right there for the CCM, the one who is involved with the 220 shares for the $120 million. So I don't know if it was, when I explained it tonight, apparently he understood it. At least I thought he understood it. It seemed like he only understand money.
Hold it again. We've got another caller on a busy evening. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Manners. I didn't even know that you all was going to be on tonight.
Oh, we don't take holidays here, man. We keep working.
You know, I just want to say congratulations to all the candidates of the Nevis Reformation Party. And I know if it had left to the people, the residents people here on Nevis, be it born Nevisians or the people who are living among us, NRP would have won this election hands down. Mr. Manners, I just want to take 1 minute to explain.
No, take the time, man.
I have a relative who lives on one of the islands. I called him and I asked him to come home to vote and support us in the recent held election. He says to me, yes, he is willing to come, but his situation is he is not vaccinated. So therefore, if he do accept the ticket to come, he would have to go into quarantine for 7 days. There was a specific item that I needed, and he called me the day of election. Mr. Manners, I want you to hear me clearly.
We're listening.
He called me the morning of the election, bright and early, and he said to me, what size of book you say you need? I said, number 7. He said, okay, I'll be coming home. I said, but when are you going to come home? He told me that he was contacted by a certain individual and asked him to come home to vote. So he says to them what he said to me. He is not vaccinated, and so therefore it doesn't make sense for him to come because he has to go into a quarantine. The individual who contacted him says to him, we run things. You come, and when you come, they're going to say to you at the airport or whatever, you have to go into quarantine. There will be transportation provided to take you to your destination to vote. You just get on the transportation and go straight to the polls to vote. You see where the playing field is not level? You see where the playing field is not level? And I am hoping that the people who should be hearing this is listening. The young man came in, and when he came straight to the areas he was going to vote. He voted in Brown Hill. Like I'm saying, he came and he voted in Brown Hill. Or when he came and he voted in Brown Hill, he tell me, I am doing this one for you. And after he finished voting, I said, boy, look at life. I called you 3 days ago. And you said to me, doesn't make sense for you to come because you have to go into a quarantine. But today, you was contacted on the eve of the election and asked to come home to vote. You came in on a charter and nobody put you into quarantine. How much other people came here who are not vaccinated and did the same, Mr. Manners? I think that the party needs to launch an investigation. We would know the people who come in to vote and those people who are not vaccinated and coming here and went straight to the poll and vote. It should be less squarely at the feet of the government. You could come in, your division will welcome you, yes, but if there are protocols, you must follow protocols.
I agree.
That is all I'm saying. I have nothing about our people out there who want to come in and vote, but if what goes to one should go to all.
I agree.
That is my addition to the program this evening.
Well, thank you so much for calling. Yes, so
Thank you. Yes, so we had a conversation, and it was at the time when we were trying to get, we were already launched as local candidates, and we were now bombarded with this possibility that there was going to be a federal election. And so we were scrambling around trying to find suitable candidates who were separate and apart from us to be candidates for the federal election, because we would have taken a position in the constitution of the NRP that we're not going to field candidates, the same candidates like the NRP, the CCM are doing for both local and federal elections. And so we were having the conversation. Then because we got to a point where it was crunch time and we just couldn't find, in the short period of time that we were given, the candidates who would be well vetted and who were well prepared to go into battle with these CCM seasoned guys who would have been here like 15 years. So we said, no, we can't cut your face. What do you say? Cut your nose
to spite your face.
Spite your face.
Yeah.
And so we decided, no, we're going to put aside, we're going to suspend that provision in our constitution and we're going to go ahead and use our candidates. And so I had to sit and try to explain to them now how that could work. But being a progressive party, we look worldwide to see what the trend is and what other people are doing. But then I want to confine us to their way of thinking. So I said, no guys, this is a way. And I gave them the proposal how we can get around having a person serving in Nevis, serving in St. Kitts, in ministries that would consume the time in St. Kitts with little or no time left for the business of Nevis. So I said, when you look at a place like Jamaica, they have 21 ministers. 5 of them are ministers without portfolios. That doesn't mean they're not doing work. It means that they're not restricted to a ministry. And so if you, let's say we wanted to go into food security, have a program with food security, I can very well put myself forward and say food security is an issue that affects the vision. Let me take care of that. And so I wouldn't be confined to a ministry. So I said we can operate like that. And that I thought was progressive thinking. And the guy would sit there and say, that's a good way indeed.
Yeah, but they don't do progressive thinking.
But that is the problem. And so now they want to put it on to the people as if, well, don't send her because she wouldn't have a portfolio. So she
but by the same token, the Premier comes to the people of Nevis and said that the major achievement over these past few years of Eric Evelyn is going to COP26.
Right.
And that the major achievement of Alexis Jeffers is
That in
Bayford
market.
Farm and Foy's and having night market. It's laughable.
It is laughable. You know, these guys, they're just mediocre anyway they think. And I'm like, I was so disappointed when I heard the Premier himself propagating this foolishness that I say I don't want to go to syndicates. All I was trying to show them is that we have a different way we can do things. You can, if you win, and it's an argument that is based on if.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, this is my position and I would never swear. I didn't have a seat in syndicates.
Yeah. The other thing which the Premier, propagator-in-chief, used during this campaign is saying that his enemy has to be your friend. So somehow Timothy Harris is funding your campaign. I have looked at the campaign and I realize how you guys struggle to even bring people from overseas and all of that. And I look at outgoing Prime Minister Harris, former Prime Minister Harris, struggled himself. He looked like he could have made good use of the money over there. But yet it was propagated that somehow he was sending money to you guys.
Well, the truth is, though, if had he been sending it to them, it wouldn't be an issue. He would not have been demonized and all that. But they now want to make enemies, like you said, make him our friend. So that means he was never our enemy. We don't have enemies. In politics, it is stupid for you to go out and say that you're looking enemies.
Just as how he made Labour enemies.
Right, and no one
brought the Labour government down and now want to be friends.
Want to crawl back to them. Right.
That's amazing.
Right, so we don't think like that. But he now always want to create some falsehood that he think could disadvantage his opponents, because on his own strength he cannot win on his own strength. He can only win if he weakens you, as if that is supposed to make natural sense, but the truth of the matter is we just had to discount what he had to say, because obviously it was not reflected in what we're doing. Our work was not based on any financing from anywhere. We wish we had the monies, and I keep saying to myself, I'm more of a little radical than my leader. I mean, she's more of the diplomatic kind, but if I were in their position and money would have been, as long as it's not dirty money, I would take it. But that is just my position. And I'm like, I laugh at sometimes the things that people say, because I remember our first public meeting. Everybody else have these elaborate backdrops and fancy digital thing presentations. They have what you call a production. And I remember looking at the tape of our first meeting,
wondering.
And in the back there was this there was a mango tree in the back, and somebody had just tied on a piece of thing that marked our NRP in the back. And we have come a long way. I mean, in that week, the spots that we chose after that, So, but the long and the short is that you could see it reflected in our campaign that we did not have access to money. I don't apologize for being poor. I've never apologized for being poor. What I've done is my circumstances, I've always at the end of it tried to make my circumstances better, because we're working towards the betterment of, and so I didn't have any shame in being poor. I didn't have any shame in that our campaign was obviously not well funded, but we did a lot with the little that we have, and I think that is the difference between us and them. We make do with what we have without compromising on our integrity, and we do the work. And what we're seeing on the opposite side is contrary to that. All that they get, they squander, and at the end of the day, they cannot account for it, and you don't see the results, because at the end of the day, having spent all that money that they creamed off for importing flights and all the rest of it, look at the figures, look at what the returns were. Had it not been for that, then they would not be where they are tonight. So I don't have any shame in that. I don't know that any monies were received, and if he did, I think that the Prime Minister really shortchanged us.
Dr. Bartlett, we're out of time. We're at the top of the hour. It was lovely as usual engaging with you as we tried to review the election of Friday, August 5th. It doesn't end there. We'll be back next week with another edition of Your Voice with the NRP. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you and good night.
Your voice, your voice, your voice with the NRP. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the NRP candidates as they amplify your voice.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers.
With all the power from the tower, this